Alien girl playfully left the human without clothes, just for her amusement. Lieutenant Rick Harmon wiped sweat from his brow as he stepped through the airlock onto the alien vessel. The Nexus-class starship Luminara hummed with technology far beyond Earth's capabilities, its sleek corridors bathed in a soft purple glow that complemented the lavender skin of its crew members. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant," Captain Dren said, his deep voice resonating through the reception chamber. The tall, broad-shouldered alien extended a four-fingered hand. "Your reputation precedes you." Rick grasped the captain's hand firmly. "Thank you, sir. Earth Command speaks highly of your people as well." He tried not to stare at the assembled crew. The Alarians were humanoid, but distinctly alien. Lavender skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights, elongated limbs, and those striking green eyes that appeared to catch every detail. "You'll be our first human liaison officer," Dren continued. "We're honored to have you aboard for this diplomatic mission." Rick nodded, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the curious stares from the crew. 6 months on an alien vessel, this assignment would make or break his career. At 32, he was the youngest officer ever selected for such a position, and he was determined not to screw it up. "Lieutenant Harmon will need a guide to help him acclimate," Captain Dren announced. "Talia, you're assigned to orientation duty." A female Alarian stepped forward, and Rick felt his breath catch. She was striking even by Alarian standards. Her lavender skin had an almost pearlescent quality, and her long, thick hair cascaded down her back in waves of deep indigo. Her body-hugging dark blue jumpsuit accentuated every graceful curve, but it was her eyes that truly captured his attention. Large, emerald green, and sparkling with what could only be described as mischief. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant," she said, her voice melodic. "I hope you'll find your stay with us enlightening." Rick cleared his throat. "Thank you. I look forward to learning about your culture." "Oh, I'm sure you'll learn quite a lot," she replied with a smile that somehow managed to be both professional and playful. As the formal reception concluded, Talia guided Rick through the ship's corridors. "Your quarters are in the diplomatic wing," she explained. "We've attempted to make them comfortable by human standards, though you may find some of our amenities different." Rick maintained his stoic expression. "I've been briefed on Alarian technology. I'm sure I'll adapt quickly." Talia cast him a sidelong glance. "Always so serious, Lieutenant. The reports mentioned humans were an emotional species." "Some of us take our duties very seriously," he replied stiffly. Her eyes sparkled with that mischievous light again. How fascinating. Over the next few days, Rick settled into a routine. Morning briefings with Captain Dren, cultural exchange sessions with various crew members, and detailed reports back to Earth Command. Throughout it all, he maintained his professional demeanor, focused, serious, and completely dedicated to his mission. But he couldn't help noticing Talia watching him. She seemed to appear around every corner, those green eyes studying him with undisguised curiosity. Whenever they spoke, she seemed determined to provoke some emotional response from him, her questions becoming increasingly personal. "Do all humans maintain such rigid control?" she asked during their 4th day of orientation. "It's not about control," Rick replied. "It's about professionalism." "Fascinating," she said, that now familiar mischievous smile playing at her lips. "On Alar, we believe that expressing emotions is essential for mental health." "Different species, different customs," Rick said diplomatically. On the 5th day, Talia showed him the recreation deck. "And these are our hygiene facilities," she explained, gesturing toward a row of transparent cylindrical chambers. "The shower capsules use sonic vibrations and specialized cleansing particles, much more efficient than your water-based systems." Rick examined the technology with genuine interest. "Impressive. Earth starships still use recycled water systems." "You're welcome to try them," Talia offered. "They're programmed for various species' comfort levels." "I might do that," Rick said, making a mental note to research the proper protocols first. Later that evening, after a particularly grueling training session in the ship's gravity-adjusted gymnasium, Rick decided to take Talia up on her offer. The sweat-soaked workout clothes clung uncomfortably to his skin, and the prospect of an advanced cleaning system was too tempting to resist. The hygiene chamber was empty when he arrived. Following the instructions on the display panel, he selected Human from the species menu and stepped into one of the cylindrical chambers. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Rick removed his workout clothes and placed them in the designated receptacle. Standing naked in the transparent chamber felt strangely vulnerable, but he reminded himself that privacy standards differed among species. Besides, the recreation deck had been empty when he arrived. He pressed the activation button, expecting the cleaning cycle to begin. Instead, a mechanical voice announced, "Self-cleaning protocol initiated. Chamber locked for maintenance cycle." Wait, what? Rick pressed the cancel button, but nothing happened. The control panel had gone dark. A movement outside the chamber caught his eye. Talia stood there, those green eyes dancing with barely suppressed laughter. She placed a finger to her lips in a universal gesture for silence, then winked at him. Rick's face flushed with embarrassment as he realized what had happened. He was trapped, completely naked, in a transparent chamber, and Talia had orchestrated the whole thing. "Very funny," he mouthed through the glass. "Let me out." Talia's smile widened as she shook her head slowly. She held up a small device, presumably the override control, and took a step back, clearly enjoying his predicament. For the first time since boarding the Luminara, Lieutenant Rick Harmon's professional facade cracked, and somewhere deep inside, past the embarrassment and indignation, he felt something unexpected, a spark of amusement at the sheer audacity of her prank. Rick stood in the transparent chamber, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and growing determination. Talia's emerald eyes sparkled with delight as she twirled the override device between her slender fingers. "This isn't funny, Talia," Rick called, his voice muffled through the glass. "Let me out." She tilted her head, lavender skin catching the light as she pretended to consider his request. "Not until you admit that humans are capable of showing emotion," she replied with a mischievous grin. "I've been trying to see past that serious facade for days." Rick crossed his arms over his chest, trying to maintain some dignity despite his nakedness. "This is completely unprofessional." "Professionalism," Talia sighed dramatically. "Is that all humans think about? On Alar, playful interactions strengthen bonds between colleagues. On Earth, trapping someone naked in a shower is called harassment," Rick countered, though he couldn't completely suppress the twitch at the corner of his mouth. Talia noticed immediately. "Was that almost a smile, Lieutenant?" "It was a grimace," he insisted, but the tension in his shoulders had eased slightly. "Fine, you've made your point. Humans have emotions. Now let me out." With a satisfied nod, Talia pressed a button on her device. The chamber door slid open with a soft hiss. "Your clothes are in the sanitizing unit," she said, turning her back to give him privacy, a gesture that seemed oddly considerate after her prank. "They'll be clean in about 3 minutes." Rick quickly grabbed a towel from a nearby rack and wrapped it around his waist. "You know this means war, right?" Talia turned, her expression brightening with surprise and delight. "Does it? How intriguing!" "You've awakened the prankster in me," Rick warned, a genuine smile finally breaking through. "And humans have been perfecting the art of practical jokes for centuries." "I look forward to seeing what you come up with," she challenged, eyes gleaming. "If you can." The next morning, Rick entered the command deck with a newfound spring in his step. For the first time since arriving on the Luminara, he felt energized by something other than duty. Planning his revenge against Talia had occupied his thoughts all night, and he'd finally settled on the perfect counter-prank. "You seem different today, Lieutenant," Captain Dren observed as Rick took his position for the morning briefing. "Just adapting to life aboard the Luminara, sir," Rick replied, catching Talia's curious glance from across the deck. Throughout the day, Rick maintained his usual professional demeanor, but there was a subtle difference. He smiled more easily, engaged more naturally with the crew, and even joined a group for lunch in the mess hall, something he'd previously avoided in favor of eating alone while reviewing reports. Talia watched this transformation with evident satisfaction, occasionally catching his eye across rooms with knowing looks that sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. That evening, Rick put his plan into action. Using his security clearance, he accessed the environmental controls for Talia's quarters and made a few subtle adjustments to her sonic shower settings. The next morning, he was rewarded when Talia entered the mess hall with her usually indigo hair, tinted a vibrant shade of pink. "Good morning," Rick greeted innocently as she slid into the seat across from him. "New look?" "Very clever, Lieutenant," she said, running her fingers through the pink strands. "The color molecules in my shower were recalibrated to human spectrum settings." I have no idea what you're talking about, he replied, fighting to keep his expression neutral. The color will fade in a few days, she continued, leaning forward. But I must say, I'm impressed. Most humans would have chosen something more obvious for revenge. Who says this is my only move? Rick countered, enjoying their verbal sparring more than he cared to admit. Talia's eyes widened with delight. A multi-stage strategy? Now you're speaking like an Alarian. Over the next few days, their prank war escalated. Rick found his universal translator reprogrammed to speak in rhymes during an important briefing. Talia discovered her gravity boots recalibrated to make her bounce slightly with each step. Rick's food synthesizer would only produce desserts for an entire day. Talia's door chime was reprogrammed to play ancient Earth disco music. Each prank was clever, harmless, and, most importantly, made them both laugh. The crew watched with amusement as the serious human lieutenant and the mischievous Alarian officer circled each other in this elaborate dance of wits. You know, Talia said one evening, as they sat together in the observation lounge, watching the stars streak by, on Alar, this kind of playful rivalry often precedes courtship. Rick felt his pulse quicken. Is that so? She nodded, her now faded pink hair catching the starlight. We believe true compatibility is revealed through play. When two people can challenge each other intellectually and respond with humor, rather than anger, it suggests a deeper connection. On Earth, Rick said carefully, we sometimes say that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Talia's eyes met his, the perpetual mischief in them now mingled with something warmer. And are you indifferent to me, Lieutenant Harmon? Far from it, he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. You've made it impossible to be indifferent. She smiled, reaching across the table to touch his hand. The contact sent a pleasant tingle up his arm. Good. Indifference would be terribly boring. As Rick looked into her eyes, he realized how much had changed in just a few days. The rigid professional mask he'd worn since boarding had cracked, revealing something more authentic beneath. And strangely, he felt more effective in his diplomatic role, not less. The crew had warmed to him since he'd begun showing his true personality. Thank you, he said suddenly. For what? For the shower prank, he replied with a grin. I needed that. Talia's laughter filled the observation lounge, melodic and genuine. You're welcome, Lieutenant. Though I must warn you, I'm already planning my next move. I wouldn't have it any other way, Rick said, realizing he meant it completely. So, tell me about human courtship rituals, Talia said, her emerald eyes gleaming with curiosity as she and Rick shared a quiet dinner in her quarters. 2 weeks had passed since the shower incident, and their prank war had evolved into something deeper, a dance of mutual attraction neither could deny. Rick took a sip of his synthesized wine, considering her question. They vary widely depending on culture and individual preference. Some are traditional, flowers, romantic dinners, dancing. Others are more modern. And which do you prefer, Lieutenant? Talia leaned forward, her lavender skin catching the soft ambient light. I'm a bit of a traditionalist, he admitted with a smile, though I've never courted an alien before, so I'm open to new experiences. Courted? Talia repeated the word with evident delight. What a charming term. On Alar, we have a similar concept called Viridian, the period of playful challenge before commitment. Rick nodded. Like our prank war. Exactly. Her fingers brushed against his across the table, sending that now familiar tingle through his body. Viridian tests compatibility through humor, intellect, and physical awareness. Physical awareness? Rick raised an eyebrow. Talia's smile turned mischievous. The shower incident was as much about seeing your physical form as it was about provoking an emotional response. Rick felt heat rise to his face. So you were evaluating me? Appreciating would be a better word, she replied, her voice dropping to a sultry tone that made his pulse quicken. Alarians believe physical compatibility is as important as emotional and intellectual harmony. Humans generally prefer to discover that compatibility more privately, Rick said, though he couldn't deny the thrill her boldness sent through him. How fascinating. Talia tilted her head. Your species seems to harbor such contradictions. Your entertainment broadcasts display physical intimacy openly, yet you maintain these privacy taboos and personal interactions? It's complicated, Rick conceded. What about Alarians? Are there any taboos I should know about? Talia considered this. We find emotional dishonesty deeply offensive. Pretending to feel something you don't, or hiding something you do feel, is considered a grave insult. That explains why you were so determined to break through my professional facade, Rick realized. Yes, your constant restraint was perplexing. Her fingers traced patterns on his hand. I found myself wondering what emotions you might be concealing. And now? Rick asked, turning his palm to catch her fingers in his. Now I see the truth, she said softly. Humans don't feel less than Alarians. You simply express it differently. Your restraint is an absence of emotion, but a different form of strength. The insight surprised him. That's remarkably perceptive. I've been studying you closely, she admitted with a playful smile. For scientific purposes, of course. Of course, Rick echoed, returning her smile. Any other cultural differences I should be aware of? Talia's expression grew more serious. There is one important thing. For Alarians, physical intimacy without emotional connection is considered empty, meaningless. Some humans, I understand, can separate the two. Some can, Rick acknowledged, but not all of us. Not me. The admission hung in the air between them, charged with implication. Good, Talia whispered, her eyes holding his, because I find myself experiencing emotions for you that go beyond scientific curiosity or diplomatic courtesy. Rick's heart raced as he leaned closer. I feel the same way. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle exploration of alien territory. Her lips were softer than he expected, with a subtle sweetness he couldn't quite identify. When they parted, Talia's eyes were wide with wonder. That was a human kiss, she breathed. Was it okay? Rick asked, suddenly uncertain. More than okay, she assured him, touching her lips with her fingertips. Alarians kiss too, but not exactly like that. Your way has intensity. Would you show me the Alarian way? Rick asked. Talia nodded, leaning forward again. This time she placed her palms against his temples, creating a tingling sensation that spread through his mind as their lips met. The connection felt deeper somehow, as if they were sharing not just physical contact, but something more essential. When they separated, Rick felt slightly dazed. That was intimate, Talia finished for him. Our nervous systems are compatible enough for basic empathic connection. You could feel what I was feeling. Impressions, sensations, she explained. Not thoughts. It's how Alarians share emotional states during intimacy. The implications made Rick's head swim. That's incredible. There's so much more to explore, Talia said, her voice a promising whisper. If you're willing. Rick found himself nodding, drawn to her in ways he couldn't fully articulate. I'd like that, but I should warn you, humans form strong attachments. If we pursue this, it won't be casual for me. Nor for me, Talia assured him, taking his hands in hers. Alarians mate for life, Lieutenant. Rick, he corrected gently. If we're going to explore this, I think you should call me Rick. Rick, she repeated, the name sounding musical in her accent. And there's something else you should know about Alarians. What's that? Her eyes sparkled with that familiar mischief. We're extremely fertile with compatible species. Our scientists never expected humans would be among them, but recent studies suggest possibilities. Rick's eyes widened slightly. Are you saying? I'm saying we should be aware of the potential consequences, she interrupted smoothly. Unless such consequences would be unwelcome to you. The question carried weight beyond the immediate moment. Rick considered it carefully, aware that his answer might shape their future in ways he couldn't predict. Not unwelcome, he finally said. Unexpected, perhaps, but not unwelcome. Talia's smile was radiant. Then perhaps we should continue this cultural exchange in more comfortable surroundings? As she led him toward her sleeping quarters, Rick reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since boarding the Luminara. What had begun as a serious diplomatic assignment had evolved into something far more personal and potentially far more significant. Whatever came next, he knew one thing with certainty. He would never look at a shower the same way again. The news spread through the Luminara faster than a quantum transmission. By the time Rick entered the mess hall the following morning, conversations hushed as heads turned in his direction. He felt the weight of curious stares, some amused, others concerned, a few openly disapproving. "Lieutenant Harmon," Medical Officer Naren called, gesturing to the empty seat beside him. The older Ilarian's expression was carefully neutral, but Rick detected an undercurrent of tension. "Good morning, Doctor," Rick said, setting down his breakfast tray. "Is something wrong?" Naren's antennae twitched slightly, a sign of discomfort Rick had learned to recognize. "There are discussions about your relationship with Officer Talia." Rick maintained his composure, though his grip tightened on his utensil. "I wasn't aware my personal life was a matter for ship-wide discussion." "Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be," Naren agreed. "But this is unprecedented. No human and Ilarian have ever formed a bond of this nature." Before Rick could respond, his communication device chimed. "Lieutenant Harmon, report to Captain Dren's office immediately." The captain's expression was grave when Rick arrived. Standing beside him was Commander Valen, the ship's stern executive officer, whose perpetual frown seemed even more pronounced than usual. "Lieutenant," Captain Dren began, "I've received communications from both Earth Command and the Ilarian High Council regarding your situation with Officer Talia." Rick straightened his shoulders. "With all due respect, sir, I wasn't aware my personal relationships required approval from either government." "Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't," Commander Valen interjected. "But this is hardly normal. The physiological compatibility between humans and Ilarians was theoretical until now. There are concerns." "What kind of concerns?" Rick asked, maintaining his diplomatic tone despite the rising heat in his chest. Captain Dren sighed. "The Ilarian Council fears cultural contamination. Humans are known for your adaptability and influence on other species. There are historical precedents that make some counselors nervous." "And Earth Command," Rick prompted. "They worry about divided loyalties," Valen said bluntly. "If you and Talia were to produce offspring—" "That's extremely premature," Rick interrupted, his patience wearing thin. "Is it?" Valen challenged. "Ilarians mate for life, Lieutenant, and they're remarkably fertile with compatible species. The genetic implications alone—" "Commander," Captain Dren cut in, "let's not get ahead of ourselves." He turned to Rick with a softer expression. "Lieutenant, no one is ordering you to end your relationship. We're simply making you aware of the diplomatic complexities. This mission was intended to strengthen human-Ilarian relations, not complicate them with unprecedented biological entanglements." Rick took a deep breath, centering himself. "I understand the concerns, Captain, but with respect, humans have a long history of overcoming biological and cultural differences. It's one of our strengths." "Indeed," Dren acknowledged. "Your species' adaptability is legendary. It's part of why you've advanced so quickly in the galactic community." "Adaptability or aggression?" Valen muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Rick turned to the commander, eyes narrowing. "Humans aren't aggressive by nature, Commander. We're protective. There's a difference." "A semantic distinction," Valen dismissed. "No," Rick countered firmly. "It's fundamental to understanding us. Humans don't seek conflict. We respond to it. We protect what we care about." The intensity in his voice seemed to surprise both Ilarians. Captain Dren studied him with renewed interest. "And you care about Officer Talia," he stated rather than asked. "I do," Rick confirmed without hesitation. After a moment, Dren nodded. "Very well, I'll inform both governments that the relationship will continue under observation. Commander Valen will prepare protocols for any potential developments." Rick was dismissed shortly after, his mind racing as he navigated the corridors toward Talia's research lab. He found her bent over a console, her indigo hair cascading over one shoulder as she analyzed data patterns. She looked up immediately as if sensing his presence. "They called you in too?" "Captain Dren and Commander Valen," Rick confirmed, moving closer. "You?" "The ship's cultural liaison and medical director," Talia said with a rueful smile. "They were quite thorough in their concerns about human-Ilarian compatibility." "Are you okay?" Rick asked, noticing the tension in her shoulders. "I'm more concerned about you," she replied. "Ilarians understand life bonding. Humans have more flexible arrangements." Rick took her hands in his. "Not all humans. Some of us still believe in commitment." Her emerald eyes searched his face. "The authorities will be watching us closely now. My people fear your species' influence. They call it the human tide. Your ability to adapt and transform other cultures simply by existing alongside them. Is that what you're afraid of? Rick asked gently. Being transformed? No, Talia said with surprising certainty. I'm afraid they'll try to separate us. The vulnerability in her voice touched something deep within him. That won't happen, he promised. Humans are stubborn that way. When we commit to something or someone, we don't give up easily. Her smile returned, brightening her lavender features. That's what terrifies them, you know, your determination. It's also what I find most attractive about you. Rick felt a surge of pride at her words. Throughout human history, their tenacity had been both blessing and curse, driving them to overcome seemingly impossible odds while sometimes blinding them to the costs. But in this moment, with Talia looking at him with those sparkling emerald eyes, it felt like their greatest strength. Let them watch, he said, brushing a strand of indigo hair from her face. We'll show them that differences can be strengths, not weaknesses. How very human of you, Talia teased, her fingers tracing the contours of his face with wonder, always turning challenges into opportunities. It's what we do, Rick replied with a smile. Humanity's greatest talent, finding ways to thrive where others see only obstacles. That night, in the privacy of Rick's quarters, they explored the physical aspects of their connection with both curiosity and passion. Their anatomical similarities made intimacy possible, while their differences made it extraordinary. The empathic connection Talia shared during their most intimate moments created a feedback loop of sensation that left Rick breathless and amazed at the depth of their compatibility. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the dim light, Talia traced patterns on his chest. The medical director was quite concerned about this aspect of our relationship, she admitted. He warned me that human mating practices are energetic. Rick couldn't help but laugh. Is that a diplomatic way of saying we're too rough? More enthusiastic than Alarians typically are, she clarified with a mischievous smile, though I find I quite enjoy your enthusiasm. As sleep began to claim them, Rick found himself thinking about the concerns raised by both their governments, the possibility of offspring, the cultural implications, the potential conflicts of loyalty, all valid concerns from a diplomatic perspective. But in this moment, with Talia's lavender form nestled against him, those concerns seemed distant and abstract compared to the very real connection they had forged. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, human determination and Alarian adaptability proving stronger than the sum of their parts. 3 weeks after their relationship became official, Rick noticed subtle changes in Talia. Her normally boundless energy seemed diminished, and twice he'd found her napping in her lab, something she'd never done before. When she declined her favorite spiced tea at breakfast, citing a sudden aversion to the aroma, Rick's concern deepened. Are you feeling all right? He asked as they walked together toward the command deck. Just tired, Talia assured him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The cultural exchange project is demanding more attention than expected. Rick wasn't convinced. Maybe you should see Dr. Naren. I'm fine, she insisted, squeezing his hand. Alarians have different energy cycles than humans. This is normal. But 2 days later, when Talia abruptly excused herself from a diplomatic briefing and rushed from the room with a hand pressed to her mouth, Rick followed. He found her in the corridor, leaning against the wall, her lavender skin paler than usual. That's it, he said firmly. We're going to medical. This time she didn't argue. Dr. Naren's antennae twitched rapidly as he ran his scanner over Talia's reclining form. The medical bay's soft blue lighting made her skin appear almost luminescent as she lay on the examination table. Rick stood nearby, arms crossed, watching the doctor's expression grow increasingly astonished. Impossible, Naren muttered, adjusting his scanner settings and repeating the procedure. What is it? Rick demanded, his protective instincts flaring. The doctor looked up, his compound eyes blinking rapidly. Officer Talia is gestating. I'm what? Talia pushed herself up on her elbows. Pregnant, Rick translated automatically, his mind racing to process the implications. Yes, Naren confirmed, with what appears to be a human-Alarian hybrid embryo, the first of its kind. The room fell silent as the three of them absorbed this revelation. Rick moved to Talia's side, taking her hand in his. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her grip was strong. The theoretical models suggested this was impossible, Naren continued, his scientific curiosity overtaking his initial shock. Human and Alarian genetic structures should be too divergent for natural conception. Well, the evidence suggests otherwise, Rick pointed out, nodding toward Talia's midsection. Indeed. The doctor's antennae twitched with excitement. This is unprecedented, revolutionary even. The implications for xenobiology alone. Doctor, Rick interrupted firmly, before you start planning research papers, remember this is our child you're discussing, not a science experiment. Naren had the grace to look abashed. Of course, Lieutenant. My apologies. He turned to Talia. You appear to be approximately 3 weeks along. The embryo shows stable development, though I'll need to monitor you closely as this progresses. There's no historical precedent for such a pregnancy. Is she in any danger? Rick asked, the protective edge in his voice unmistakable. Unknown, Naren admitted, but Alarians have remarkably adaptable reproductive systems. It's one of our evolutionary advantages. After a thorough examination and a barrage of tests, they were finally left alone in the medical bay. Rick sat beside Talia on the examination table, their hands still intertwined. A baby, she whispered, wonder and apprehension mingling in her voice. Our baby. Rick nodded, still processing. Are you okay with this? It's unexpected, to say the least. Talia placed her free hand over her abdomen. On Alar, new life is always celebrated, no matter how surprising its arrival. She looked up at him, vulnerability clear in her emerald eyes. But what about you? Humans have more complex views on reproduction, yes. Rick considered his answer carefully. In truth, he'd never given much thought to fatherhood. His career had always come first, until Talia. Now faced with this unexpected development, he searched his feelings and found not fear or regret, but a fierce protectiveness and growing excitement. We do, he acknowledged, but speaking personally, I'm happy, shocked, but happy. The relief in her smile was palpable. Really? Really, he confirmed, leaning forward to kiss her forehead, though I think we just complicated our diplomatic mission considerably. As if on cue, Rick's communication device chimed with an incoming message. Lieutenant Harmon and Officer Talia, report to Captain Dren's office immediately. They exchanged knowing looks. That was fast, Rick remarked. Medical data is automatically transmitted to the captain in cases of significant health developments. Talia explained as they made their way to the command deck. Captain Dren was not alone. Commander Valen stood at his side, looking even more disapproving than usual. On the large view screen behind them were two stern faces, Admiral Rice from Earth Command and High Counselor Merrick from the Alarian government. Lieutenant, Officer Talia, Captain Dren greeted them, his tone carefully neutral. I believe congratulations are in order. Thank you, sir, Rick responded, standing tall beside Talia. While the captain may offer pleasantries, the High Council views this development with grave concern. Counselor Merrick interjected, his elongated features set in a disapproving frown. This unprecedented genetic mingling was precisely what we feared. With respect, Counselor, Talia replied with surprising firmness. Alarian law has always protected the sanctity of life bonds and their natural consequences. Traditional life bonds between Alarians, Merrick corrected. This is something else entirely. Admiral Rice cleared her throat. Earth Command shares the Council's concerns, though for different reasons. Lieutenant Harmon, your primary duty was to represent human interests in this diplomatic mission. This personal development creates significant complications. Rick felt Talia tense beside him. He placed a steadying hand at the small of her back before addressing both officials. Admiral Counselor, I understand your concerns, but with respect, this child represents the very essence of our diplomatic mission. Proof that humans and Alarians can not only coexist, but create something new and wonderful together. Poetic, Lieutenant, Merrick said dryly, but hardly practical. The genetic implications alone are fascinating, Captain Dren interrupted, surprising everyone, and potentially valuable to both our species. All eyes turned to the captain, who continued with growing confidence. Consider the possibilities. A child with the strengths of both species could become a powerful symbol of our alliance, living proof of our compatibility and shared future. A thoughtful silence followed his words. Admiral Rice was the first to respond. An interesting perspective, Captain. Earth has historically valued diversity and adaptation. Perhaps there is diplomatic potential here. The Council will require extensive study of this situation, Merrick conceded reluctantly. Officer Talia will return to ALR immediately for proper monitoring. No, Rick and Talia said simultaneously. I mean, with respect, Rick amended. Talia and I will remain together throughout this pregnancy. If specialized medical care is required, we'll both travel to ALR. Or Earth, Talia added, her hand finding his. The unified front they presented seemed to give both officials pause. After a moment, Admiral Rice nodded slowly. Very well. For now, continue your duties aboard the Luminara. We'll convene a joint medical diplomatic commission to address this situation properly. After the transmission ended, Captain Dren turned to them with a mixture of exasperation and amusement. Well, Lieutenant, when I said this mission would strengthen human-Alarian relations, this wasn't quite what I had in mind. Despite the tension, Rick couldn't help but smile. Humans have a saying, Captain. Life finds a way. You want us to do what? Rick stared at Captain Dren in disbelief, his hand instinctively finding Talia's across the conference table. 2 months had passed since the revelation of Talia's pregnancy. Her formerly form-fitting jumpsuit had been modified with subtle expandable panels to accommodate her gently rounding belly. The initial diplomatic furor had settled into an uneasy acceptance, with both governments maintaining a watchful eye on the situation. Represent the Luminara at the Galactic Cooperation Summit, Captain Dren repeated calmly. It's a logical assignment. Your unique situation has already garnered significant attention throughout the Alliance. Commander Valen, who had gradually warmed to their relationship, nodded in agreement. The summit occurs once every 5 years. Representatives from 37 spacefaring species will attend. Your presence would be symbolic. You mean we'd be exhibits, Rick said flatly. I mean you would be ambassadors, Dren corrected, of a new possibility for interspecies cooperation. Talia, who had been quietly contemplating the captain's proposal, finally spoke. The Tyrellians will be there, won't they? That's why you're suggesting this. Dren's antennae twitched. A sign Rick had learned indicated surprise. Your insight serves you well, Officer Talia. Yes, the Tyrellians have requested a formal introduction to the human delegation. Rick frowned. The isolationists? I thought they refused all contact with newly spacefaring races. They have, until now, Valen confirmed. Your species has captured their interest, particularly after reports of your reproductive compatibility with Alarians reach them. So we're diplomatic bait, Rick concluded. You're an opportunity, Dren countered. The Tyrellians control access to the Cygnus Reach, territory that would cut travel time to Earth by 60%. They've rebuffed all previous overtures from both humans and Alarians. Talia squeezed Rick's hand. What aren't you telling us, Captain? Dren hesitated, exchanging glances with Valen before continuing. The Tyrellians have a unique cultural perspective. They believe that species capable of producing viable offspring together share a cosmic destiny. They call it stellar resonance. And they think humans and Alarians have this resonance? Rick asked skeptically. They're intrigued by the possibility, Valen said, enough to break centuries of isolation protocol. Rick and Talia exchanged looks, communicating silently in the way they'd perfected over their months together. We'll do it, Talia decided, her emerald eyes gleaming with the familiar mischief that had first drawn Rick to her, but on one condition. Name it, Dren said. No medical examinations, Rick stated firmly. Our child isn't a scientific curiosity to be prodded and analyzed. Agreed, Dren said without hesitation. You'll attend diplomatic functions only. No examinations. 3 days later, the Luminara docked at Centauri Station, a massive space habitat that served as neutral territory for interstellar diplomacy. Rick adjusted the collar of his formal Earth Command uniform as he and Talia prepared to disembark. Nervous? He asked, noticing her fingers fidgeting with her ceremonial Alarian sash. A little, she admitted. I've never been the center of so much attention before. Rick smiled. That's hard to believe, considering how you introduced yourself to me. Talia's eyes sparkled with remembered mischief. Trapping a naked human in a shower was merely scientific curiosity. This is politics. I'm not sure which is more dangerous, Rick quipped, offering her his arm as the airlock doors opened. The reception hall was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Some species Rick recognized from his diplomatic briefings. Others were completely unfamiliar. He felt the weight of curious stares as they entered, some intrigued, others clearly disapproving. Lieutenant Harmon, Officer Talia, a melodious voice greeted them. An elegant being with iridescent scales and elongated limbs approached. "I am Ambassador Laura of the Centauri Diplomatic Corps. Welcome to the summit." "Thank you, Ambassador," Rick replied with a formal bow. "Your presence has generated quite the buzz," Laura continued, leading them through the crowd. "The Tyrellian delegation has requested a private audience before tonight's reception." "Already?" Talia whispered to Rick. "That's unusually forward for Tyrellians." The Tyrellian representatives waited in a small antechamber off the main hall. They were tall, willowy beings with translucent skin through which Rick could see the faint pulsing of multiple hearts. Their eyes, 3 per individual, were milky white without pupils. "Greetings, human Rick and Alarian Talia," the lead Tyrellian said, its voice resonating oddly as if coming from multiple sources. "I am Elder Seth. We have awaited this meeting with great anticipation." Rick performed the traditional Tyrellian greeting he'd hastily memorized on the journey. "The honor is ours, Elder Seth." The Elder's eyes seemed to focus on Talia's midsection. "The resonance lives within you. May we sense it?" Talia glanced at Rick uncertainly. He nodded slightly. They'd been briefed that Tyrellians perceived energy fields rather than physical forms. "You may," Talia consented. Elder Seth extended a long, delicate hand, holding it several inches from Talia's abdomen without touching her. The other Tyrellians made soft musical sounds that Rick's translator couldn't interpret. "Extraordinary," Elder Seth finally said, withdrawing. "The cosmic harmony is strong. 2 discordant melodies finding perfect resonance." "Is that good?" Rick asked cautiously. "It confirms what we suspected about your species, human Rick," the Elder replied. "You possess the adaptive harmony, the ability to find resonance where none should exist. It is exceedingly rare." The meeting continued for another hour, with the Tyrellians asking detailed questions about human culture, adaptability, and values. Rick answered honestly, occasionally deferring to Talia for the Alarian perspective. As they prepared to leave, Elder Seth made an unexpected announcement. "The Tyrellian Conclave has authorized me to offer preliminary access rights to the Cygnus Reach for both human and Alarian vessels, effective immediately." Rick struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. This was an extraordinary concession, one that both Earth Command and the Alarian Council had sought unsuccessfully for decades. "The Conclave is most generous," he managed. "May I ask what prompted this decision?" Elder Seth's 3 eyes blinked in unison. "Your offspring represents a new harmony in the cosmic symphony. Such rare convergences must be nurtured. The Cygnus Reach will allow your peoples to strengthen their connection." After the Tyrellians departed, Rick turned to Talia with amazement. "Did we just secure a major diplomatic victory by simply existing?" Talia's laughter echoed in the empty chamber. "It seems our child is quite the negotiator already." As they made their way to the main reception, Rick reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. What had begun with a playful prank, leaving him naked and embarrassed in a shower, had somehow led to this moment of diplomatic triumph. "You know," he said, pulling Talia close as they paused before entering the grand hall, "I never properly thanked you for that shower incident." Her emerald eyes danced with mischief. "Oh? And how would you thank me, Lieutenant?" "By admitting you were right," he said, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I needed to lighten up, and I'm very glad you made sure I did." "Humanity's greatest strength," Talia replied with a tender smile, "is its ability to adapt and find joy even in the most unexpected circumstances." Together they stepped into the reception hall, ready to face whatever diplomatic challenges awaited. A human and an Alarian, united by a prank that had changed everything. "Lyra, no! Not Daddy's communicator again!" Rick lunged across the living room of their quarters aboard the Luminara, but he was too late. His 1-year-old daughter had already dunked his official Earth Command communicator into her cup of juice, giggling delightedly as the device sparked and went dark. "That's the 3rd one this month," Talia observed with amusement, her emerald eyes twinkling as she entered from the kitchen area. "I think she's developing your technical aptitude." "Very funny," Rick grumbled, fishing out the ruined device. "More like your mischievous streak." Lyran Harmon Viridian, named for the Tyrellian ambassador who had facilitated their diplomatic triumph a year earlier, beamed up at her father with an expression that was pure Talia, complete with the same sparkle of mischief in her eyes. Her skin was a pale rose color, a perfect blend of human tones and Alarian lavender. Soft chestnut hair framed her face, but it had the same indigo undertones as her mother's. Most striking were her eyes, human in shape but Alarian in color, a vibrant emerald green that seemed to glow with inner light. "She's just testing the durability of human technology?" Talia teased, lifting their daughter into her arms. "Aren't you, little troublemaker?" Lyran babbled happily in response, a mix of human words and Alarian tonal sounds that had become her unique form of communication. Rick couldn't maintain his annoyance in the face of his daughter's delight. "At this rate, we'll need to requisition child-proof equipment from both governments." The past year had been a whirlwind of change. After the Galactic Cooperation Summit, Rick and Talia had become unofficial ambassadors for human-Alarian relations. Their daughter's birth 6 months ago had been broadcast throughout both territories. The first human-Alarian child, a living symbol of what Captain Dren had called the adaptive harmony of humanity. What no one had anticipated were Lyran's unique abilities. By 3 months, she had demonstrated empathic sensitivity that surpassed even full-blooded Alarians. By 6 months, she could manipulate simple electronic devices without touching them, a talent that had both medical teams fascinated and her parents constantly vigilant. "The Admiral's calling in 10 minutes, Rick reminded Talia, gesturing to the now-defunct communicator. "I'll have to use the main comm system." "I'll clean her up," Talia promised, carrying Lyran toward their bathing chamber. "Try not to look too frazzled for Earth Command." Rick smiled as he watched them go, still amazed at how thoroughly his life had changed. The serious, buttoned-up lieutenant who had first boarded the Luminara seemed like a different person entirely. In the main communication room, Admiral Rice's expression remained impassive as Rick explained the situation with his daughter in the communicator. "Children will be children, Lieutenant," she said with unexpected understanding, "even unprecedented hybrid ones." "Thank you for your patience, Admiral." "How is Lyran developing?" Rice asked, her professional tone softening slightly. "The Medical Commission is eager for updates." "She's advancing rapidly," Rick reported proudly. "Her language skills are developing in both human and Alarian patterns simultaneously, and her empathic abilities are remarkable." "And the telekinetic incidents?" Rick hesitated. They'd been trying to keep the full extent of Lyran's abilities confidential. "Minor manipulations only. Nothing concerning." Rice's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't press the issue. "The reason for my call, Lieutenant, is to inform you that Earth Command has approved your request for extended family leave on Earth. The Alarian Council has granted Officer Talia diplomatic visitor status for 6 months." Rick's heart leapt. "That's excellent news, Admiral. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Rice cautioned. "There are conditions. The Medical Commission requires weekly examinations for both Officer Talia and your daughter, and you'll be expected to make public appearances as goodwill ambassadors." "We understand," Rick assured her. "We've been living under similar conditions here." After concluding the call, Rick hurried back to their quarters, eager to share the news. He found Talia and Lyran in the nursery, his daughter now clean and dressed in a small replica of an Alarian ceremonial outfit. "Earth Command approved our visit," he announced, scooping Lyran into his arms and spinning her around, eliciting delighted giggles. "We're going to Earth!" Talia's expression was a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "When?" "The Tyrellian transport leaves in 3 days," Rick said. "We'll be the first to use the new Cygnus Reach corridor. It'll cut the journey to just 2 weeks." "So soon," Talia murmured, her fingers absently playing with a strand of her indigo hair, a nervous habit Rick had come to recognize. He set Lyran down in her play area and moved to embrace his wife. "Having second thoughts?" "Not about going," she clarified. "Just nervous. I'll be the first Alarian many humans have ever seen in person, and Lyran will be even more of a curiosity there than she is here." "Earth has its share of narrow-minded people," Rick acknowledged, "but most will welcome you. Humans adapt quickly. It's our greatest strength." "Your stubborn determination doesn't hurt either," Talia added with a smile, relaxing into his embrace. "That's how we survived as a species," Rick said. "When faced with the impossible, we refused to accept it." Like the impossibility of human Alarian offspring? Talia teased, glancing at their daughter, who was now levitating small toys in a circle above her head. Exactly, Rick agreed, watching Lyran's display of abilities with pride rather than concern. The medical experts said it couldn't happen, but here she is, living proof of human adaptability and Alarian compatibility. She's going to change everything, isn't she? Talia said softly. She already has, Rick replied, thinking of the diplomatic breakthroughs, scientific advancements, and cultural exchanges that had followed in the wake of Lyran's birth. And this is just the beginning. That night, after Lyran had finally fallen asleep, Rick and Talia stood in the observation lounge, watching the stars streak by. The Luminara would soon dock at Centauri Station, where they would transfer to the Tyrellian vessel for their journey to Earth. Do you ever think about that day in the shower? Talia asked suddenly, a mischievous smile playing at her lips. When I left you without clothes? Rick laughed softly. Only every time I step into a cleaning chamber. It was supposed to be just a harmless prank, she mused, a way to crack that serious facade of yours. Mission accomplished, Rick said, pulling her close, though I don't think either of us expected it would lead to all this. Talia's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. The Tyrellians would say it was cosmic destiny, that we were always meant to find each other. And what do you say? Rick asked, brushing a strand of indigo hair from her face. I say I'm grateful for human stubbornness, she replied with a smile. Any other species might have reported me for harassment. We're more adaptable than that, Rick said, leaning down to kiss her softly. It's what makes us human. As their lips met, Rick reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From a playful prank to diplomatic triumph, from unexpected pregnancy to the miracle of their daughter. Each step had seemed impossible until they made it happen together. In 3 days, they would embark on a new adventure, introducing Talia and Lyran to Earth, facing whatever challenges awaited them there. But Rick had no doubts or fears. If humanity had taught him anything, it was that the impossible was merely a challenge waiting to be overcome. And with Talia by his side and Lyran leading the way with her unique gifts, the future, however uncertain, looked brighter than ever. In the nursery nearby, little Lyran stirred in her sleep, her small hands glowing faintly as she dreamed of stars and possibilities yet to come. The first of a new kind, bridge between two worlds and living proof that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple, playful prank.